This is a very special occasion, as you know, and we know that even as we say that this is a special occasion, we know that education is something very special to us. It is a deliberate, purposeful activity. It serves moral, social, political, and economic ends. And we know that schools play an important part in achieving these ends. But how can these schools do this? This is one important rule of the curriculum. It is important that all our students everywhere achieve education. And of course, this includes our children with disabilities. It is their human right. Every child is included, and that means the deaf. The deaf must be included. So it is with excitement that we are here to launch this curriculum that is specially adapted for deaf education in Guyana. I am very glad to welcome everyone here to NSERD and to this launch. First of all, we're very happy that the Honorable Minister of Education, Dr. Rupert Roopnaraine, has consented to come to be with us. We know how important education is to him, and so we're happy that he is here. We have our Chief Planning Officer, Mrs. Evelyn Hamilton. Welcome. The consultant, who is from Jamaica, Dr. Karen Cumberbatch. And we have so many other persons in our midst, our education officers, our DEOs, our head teachers, the head of curriculum here from NSERD, persons from the SEN unit at NSERD, head teachers, everyone in the audience, all our friends, welcome to this workshop. And of course, the first part is the launch of this very special curriculum. I always say that and don't ever get to stay into a workshop, but these are very interesting topics.
This is an auspicious moment for deaf education in Guyana. I feel privileged to be part of it and to have this opportunity to share some thoughts with you who are gathered here. I hasten for us to look in the future. Follow me on an imaginary journey. Somewhere in Guyana, a mother attends postnatal clinic with her month-old baby boy, whom she calls Rion. Nurse has a clinic card in front of her and checks whether the baby is responding to sound. Well, he's not. Nurse refers mom to the nearest audiological clinic for further checks. At the same time, she gives her a special appointment to introduce mom to baby signs and explains to her the importance of starting to sign with baby now and continue to do so as baby grows, so that later on she can communicate with Rion just like with her other siblings. She will also answer also the many questions that the mother will have, who is still possibly in a perturbed state of mind about finding out that her baby boy is deaf. Rion is now a bit older. He attended a nursery class at a deaf, this is our vision. He attended a nursery class at a deaf-dedicated school, nursery school, where he was immersed in his primary language and acquired concepts appropriate for his age. He is now at primary level and on his way to becoming bilingual, taught by well-trained teachers. His reading and writing skills allow him to absorb knowledge from textbooks, newspapers, etc., and to do assignments and write exams appropriate for his age. He participates in various extracurricular activities at his school and discovers his own interests and talents. Back home, he chats with his mom and dad, who by now also function in signing, and they can give him the support that a growing boy needs. There's regular career counseling at his school, and he talks with the counselor about his future. Counsel advises him on his options for secondary and tertiary education. When Rion finally leaves secondary school, he is well educated. He is proud of his achievements so far, and he is ready to become a responsible and productive member of society.
The Ministry of Education, and so in particular to providing good curriculum. And when we are more involved, and as Dr. Ryan said, he learned a lot, I also learned.
I think in the Ministry of Education, we have recognized this in our 2014-2018 plan. One of the outcomes that we have set for ourselves is the percentage of, an indicator of that outcome is the percentage of students with special education needs who meet the standards of each grade. So in the ministry, we are now convinced that students with disabilities can meet the national standards for each grade. Of course, for them to meet those standards, we have to do some of the things that Sabine spoke about. Within the Ministry of Education itself, we have to provide the facilities, the equipment, the trained teachers, and we have to be supported by many organizations. And I want to point out that in the operational plan that we have for special education needs, we speak particularly to our collaboration with organizations. And in that context, I want to acknowledge in particular for the education of the deaf, the ministry's collaboration with the Deaf Association of Guyana, DAG, which is represented at the head table there by Sabine McIntosh. And to say that the ministry values that collaboration and hopes that in the future it will be strengthened, technical advice, all of those things have resulted in a way in which we have supported the work of the Tuition School. In terms of the blind, the ministry has worked along with the Guyana Society for the Blind. So the ministry is very eager to work with organizations for persons with disabilities and support the work that they are doing so that we can achieve the goals that we have set ourselves.
We did phase 1 last year, that situational analysis. That was in April last year, so I can't believe a year has passed already. Where we visited, Sabina and I being the we, and a member of the deaf community. We visited all the schools for the deaf, met with teachers and students and deaf teaching assistants, and we found out what was happening in the classroom, how they were learning, how the students felt about how they were being taught, what exactly they were learning. We were looking at what are the demographics of the schools, what ages are turning up, which kind of communities are being represented, the existing literacy levels, and more importantly, what are the educational and vocational needs of the Guyanese deaf community, particularly in relation to literacy. And that was phase 1. And in phase 2, which was last year, August, we looked at creating a conceptual framework, because any conceptual framework and any approach to education for the Guyanese deaf must follow the same conceptual framework and educational approaches that the MOE uses for all children. And we wanted to include the language education policy and all other policies related to educating children in Guyana. And the questions that we were tackling in that phase of the project were: which language will be used as the medium or media of education for the deaf? namely, you have English, you have Guyanese Sign Language, you have Signed English, and of course you have Guyanese Creole. And in addition to that, we have the Amerindian languages. So we had to have a discussion on which languages will be represented in the classroom. And we also had to consider the MOE's commitment to developing English competence while also maintaining and supporting the special education needs of the deaf student. And the second question we had was which languages will be used as media for literacy? Would it be English, Guyanese Sign Language, Signed English, and/or Guyanese Creole? So out of phase 2, we decided that Guyanese Sign Language and Signed English would be the media of instruction in the classroom. These would be the languages of instruction. Guyanese Sign Language being the natural language of the deaf community, and Signed English being an artificial language based on spoken and written English, in order to guarantee literacy and the ability to communicate with speaking members of the Guyanese citizenry. So in terms of literacy, we were speaking about using the same textbooks that you use in the other schools and having the child learn how to read a book using signed English, because the books are written in English. But they also have to be able to tell a story in their natural language. So you have to have a way to bridge that gap where a child has to be bilingual all of the time. Now, can you imagine being forced to do it? You choose to do it. You choose when you want to use English and when you want to use Creole. But this child will have to constantly be switching back and forth between languages, which is why we need our teachers to also have skills with bilingualism and transitioning between languages. In phase 3, which we are concluding now, we have to adapt the curriculum. And this needed us to identify the language-specific aspects of the syllabus and then adapt them to the language situation in Guyana, which is a multilingual situation. And the children are exposed at home to different languages. And when I say exposed, I don't necessarily mean that they are hearing these languages, because you have a spectrum of deafness, which we'll get into in the other sessions. So you have those who are in the slight and moderate, who may be receiving some auditory input and are actually receiving sound about these languages. But then languages come with culture. And they're seeing a language being used, and they're seeing the culture of that language being displayed for them. So they are getting some form of exposure. And we had to identify which languages are confronting the deaf child the most and looking at how to incorporate those into the curriculum. We also had to identify the achievement milestones in language skills and content subjects. So we have to know this is what this deaf child must be able to do with language, and this is what this deaf child must know about this subject area. And that is very important. For example, people think that because you're using your hands, you cannot rhyme. That's not true. The ministry wants all children to know what a rhyme is, not so? So therefore, we have to say the deaf child has to know how to tell a rhyme. Let's teach the deaf child how to rhyme. So you have something very easy. I can show you a rhyme.
Yes, please do.
So what you had there was the rhyme of the two hand. So just as you have a speech sound in English being the rhyme, you have the rhyme of this part of the sign, which is the two hand shape. So first I signed C, and then I said two people, two of them is a pronoun, and they were walking. So you're showing the child the same way you have the repetition of a particular speech sound, you're showing the child the repetition of a unit of the sign, going from one word to the next. The deaf child can learn the same literacy principles, but it is for you to be trained in how to deliver this to the child. And lastly, to hold the workshops where the teachers, principals, redos, just to expose them to what is needed at those different levels, and just to let them know that deaf can get PhDs too. And you can't assume that because this child is deaf, this child will not get very far. Okay? When we first did this, I was on the team that did this project for Jamaica. And we completed the adaptation instrument in 2010. 5 years later, the children who were at kindergarten, because they say kindergarten there, in 7th nursery, the children who are at kindergarten then and have now come through the system using the adaptation instrument have now met the national average for the grade 6 assessment test. So we are very proud. So you just please open your minds and imagine, I don't have to think about, oh, just make them do hairdressing. No. They can get, we have deaf children getting 6 CXC passes at CSEC. It is very possible. You just have to look at your child and know that, okay, I have lost the dream of having a child who will be chatting away with me and hearing me say mommy and daddy, etc. But I have a child who can communicate differently and still achieve. Okay? So we'll be having these workshops in order to create a basis for changing our attitudes, our mindsets, our perceptions, and figuring out what do we do to get them where we need to get them. Last phase is phase 4, where we implement these curricular changes and adaptations, and we train the teachers, because we know that deaf education training is not a part of the current CPC offerings, and therefore you will need to get tools for the classroom and to do educational resource creation, where we will be converting the textbooks into Guyanese Sign Language so that the children get the content, because you can't expect that they will grasp the material without having it in their natural language. If you went to a school and were taught in French straight through high school, would you have succeeded? No. So you can't expect to teach them in a foreign language and think that they will succeed.
I want to say that today really has been for me a learning experience. I was very, very attentive to what was being said by the last speaker, Dr. Kamabach, who I think has, not so slyly, but has put certain recommendations to us. And I want to assure her that to the extent that those recommendations reach us in the Ministry of Education, we intend to implement what comes to us. We are, as you know, very committed to ensuring that we can provide access to quality education throughout the country with all the challenges. And I want to assure you that in relation to children with disabilities, we are passionately committed to ensuring that the access to quality education does not exclude them. Having said that, I was at number 68 over the weekend in the quarantine talking to teachers and parents. And I stress there, as I always stress when I have teachers in the room, that there is probably no more demanding vocation than being put in charge of the development and education of the children. Because what we are doing, in effect, is providing the foundation for everything that the child will become as the child grows into adulthood. So the challenges that we face in the classroom are enormous. And this morning, I tell you, I have been very, very awed by the extraordinary range of challenges that teachers are faced with dealing with children with disabilities. I want to really salute my colleagues in the Ministry of Education who have been working on in these areas with great, I think, attentiveness and discipline and commitment, because My own feeling is that what we do for the children with disabilities is what really should drive the education process as a whole. Because what teaching the children with disabilities calls for, I think it calls for a level of dedication, commitment, and so on, and love of children. And if these principles and practices can guide us in the Ministry of Education, I think we'll be doing what we are put there to do. Our teachers, I believe, are not as appreciated as they need to be in the country. I've said this before. I believe that, we have not paid sufficient attention to the whole issue of remuneration for teachers, to the issue of providing what teachers need to function. These are all things ahead of us. One of the first things that I was able to do when I came into the ministry, I established a special commission of inquiry into education. That is due to start very soon, and I'm hoping that that commission of inquiry is going to provide all the evidence we need to implement education strategy. We're going to put the strategic plans that were produced into the commission of inquiry and have a thoroughgoing commission, which I'm hoping is going to be mobile. I don't want it stuck in Georgetown. I would like the commission to be able to move through the country where, there are different challenges in different places. So there is that. I have also called for curriculum reform, and this morning we are meeting here to deal with a specific area of curriculum development, but I have asked for curriculum reform in the schools and at the Teachers Training College, because I do believe that, I don't know when last, maybe Mrs. Hamilton can tell me, when last our curriculum has been reformed. I'm not quite sure, but I do know that it stands in need of some reform, and all of the things that we are attempting to do, for instance, removing corporal punishment from the schools and emphasizing instead counseling, trying to ensure that you train sufficient counselors so we can have, ideally speaking, a counselor in every single school so that we can deal with issues of discipline in a humane and civilized way. So I am really very grateful for this experience this morning. I wish my schedule permitted me to come to some of the workshops. I will see how that can be managed, because there are areas that will be dealt with in the workshops over the next 3 days that I have a great interest in. But let me just essentially say to you that as people who are going to be particularly challenged, I think that the teachers who are going to be dealing with our children with the deaf are facing, I think, really virtually unimaginable challenges. I mean, when I think of the ordinary challenges that face the teachers dealing with healthy children and children in possession of all of their faculties, and turn my mind to what must face a teacher who is in a class of deaf children. It is something really quite awesome. So I want to salute you for the path you've chosen. I think that, as I say, it is a path that is probably not sufficiently appreciated. I want to thank Dr. Commonbatch for coming and talking with us and bringing her expertise to bear. She is an old soldier who has been with us before, and I think that we have everything to gain from her expertise and so on. So we're very, very grateful. And over the next 3 days, I think that you are going to be exposed to a variety of techniques, experience, and all of those things that will make you, in fact, more proficient, more expert in dealing with the children who need you. In terms of the two principles that have been stressed here, the principle of inclusion and the principle of equity. We can talk as much as we like about the implementation of the goal number 4 of the strategic development goals, but the truth of the matter is that except we pay particular attention to issues of inclusion, that really there must be no instances of exclusion in our work. And secondly, the whole issue of equity. You know, we have to guarantee that the children in the distant hinterland areas have the same access to quality education that we on the coast enjoy. These are big challenges in a country like Guyana. But I think once we recognize the challenges and we accumulate what we need in terms of, you know, capacity and equipment and infrastructure and all of those things, then these are challenges that we must take on and we must succeed at. I'm really giving myself, you know, maybe 2 or 3 years in the ministry to achieve some of these things that I have set out in my opening days. And I really feel that, as I say, all my colleagues in the cabinet are depending on our succeeding in the Ministry of Education. Because, you know, frankly, if we don't succeed in the Ministry of Education, no other ministry can succeed in what they're attempting to do. Education is so central to absolutely everything that we attempt to do in the government that we dare not fail. So I want to, again, salute you for the path that you have chosen. And I admire greatly the commitment it must take to devote yourself to what you are devoting yourself to. These are children who need our attention, they need our care, they need our compassion, and above all, they need our understanding that they are equal to all the other children in terms of what is going to be available to them in Guyana. If we can do that, I believe we will be fulfilling our mission as educators. The Ministry of Education, I want to assure you, is going to put everything that we have within our powers and our capacity. We're going to put these at your disposal so you can rely on the Ministry of Education for the things that you need to carry forward your work. I give you our solemn commitment from the Ministry of Education that you have our fullest support in the work that you are doing.